हृदि निरन्तरं भासते स्वयं लिख्यते हृदयकुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तद्भावशुद्धिसमो सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः ओहं भावयुतः कुतो वरभिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः विभाति स्वयं सोहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः विभाति स्वयं. Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsang from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, it has been our practice to read two verses from Guru Vachaka Kovai, the work by Muruganar Swamigal. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that will be followed by a practice session of 10 minutes or so of self-enquiry. After the completion of these two segments of verse reading, meditation on meaning, and the practice, there will be summing up remarks by Shri Venkatesh Deshpande ji, and that shall be followed by an offering of Sri Ramanacentre. The chanting shall be by Vaibhav ji and Pratnama, and the floral offerings shall be by Manjunath ji from right here. We commence the satsang by taking up the first verse selected for us, verse number 367. We find this verse in the first of the three segments, investigation into truth. The other two segments that follow are meditation on the truth and the anubhava or experience of the truth. Verse 367 we find in investigation into truth, and the subsegment is subsegment 66, release from sorrow. Release from sorrow, verse 367. The jiva suffers mentally and languishes in discontent and grief through the delusion of being caught in the misery of birth. The jiva suffers mentally and languishes in discontent and grief through the delusion of being caught in the misery of birth. Through the depth of the ego that says I, he, the jiva, should realize his true nature as grace supreme, Brahma Swarupa, which is the higher power that governs him. This is the only means for the jiva to end his mental distress and attain supreme bliss. I'll read that again. For release from sorrow, the jiva suffers mentally and languishes in discontent and grief through the delusion of being caught in the misery of birth. Through the death of the ego that says I, he, the jiva, should realize his true nature as grace supreme, Brahma Swarupa, which is the higher power that governs him. This is the only means for the jiva to end his mental distress and attain supreme bliss. So the three Upadeshas contained in this investigation verse are that, first of all, there are many who say that the suffering is real, the grief is real, the languishing from one sorrow to another is real. But Bhagavan and Muruganar Swamigal say that this languishing, this grief is because of ignorance, because of delusion. If the grief were to be real, then we would have to do something to get rid of the grief. If it is a matter of ignorance, then the removal of ignorance or bringing in of knowledge is enough remedy. Of course, that should have its impact in the area of doing, but it is understood that it will automatically have, if proper understanding is there, but the grief that we have is because of the delusion that we are caught in the misery of birth. Many a time when Bhagavan would be asked, what is going to happen to me in my next birth? Am I headed in the right direction? Will I be saved by God? Bhagavan would return to them with another question. see if you are born now. See if they birth from out of the source as I am this body. Is that real? Is that real? Or is it merely a delusion? If it were a delusion, your attention on that delusion, you are trying to be aware of that delusion, will remove the delusion. And the grief would go, but that's in the next sentence. Through the death of the ego that says I, he, the Jiva, should realize his true nature as grace supreme Brahma Swarupa, which is the higher power that governs him. When we put attention on that I am the body, birth, that I am now born as this body, when we repeatedly put attention on that, then that attachment, the raising of consciousness to identify with this body, as though identification with this instrument is going to reveal something greater. That kind of ignorance will be put light on. We will be attending to that ignorance, and with repeated putting of attention on that, what is called as Chit Jada Granthi, Bhagavan calls it as, Vedanta calls it as Chit Jada Granthi. The I am the body idea, it is a knot between pure consciousness and the body, and through inattention, through the delusion that some other object is going to give me happiness, this delusion grows. By accumulating possessions, this delusion grows. By jumping from one body to another, the delusion continues. But if one were to search for it, Bhagavan says in Ulladinarpadu, if one were to search for it, this delusion, as it is only a delusion, vanishes. It is completely removed from existence. So that is what is said in the second sentence. This birth as I am the body, body idea, the delusion, is removed by the death of that ego, the consciousness that falsely identifies with that body. By the death of that ego, one returns to the grace supreme, which is ever present. The grace is ever present just behind the I thought. Swami Natanananda narrates this account where he says a bird got trapped in the chimney kept in the old meditation hall for the smoke to go away. Must have been sometime in November, December months. A small chimney-like thing was kept so that from the brazier, from the kumuti, the smoke goes up and out. A small sparrow kind of bird comes into the chimney from the hole that's present near the brazier and tries to go through the top. The top is only a mesh, covered mesh, and it gets hit and comes back again and then again goes out to try and go out like that. Bhagavan says, let one of you go and remove it, help it come out through the way it went. This is the same mistake that the ego makes, says Bhagavan. It has wrongly risen from the source, gone and identified with the mind, brain, sense organs, and strongly bound itself that I am this body trapped in this world. All it has to do is retrace the way it came with the quest, who am I? And come out of the Jada Granthi. The knot is to be broken. The grace is present there. Where does the wave have its source? In the ocean. Automatically, that grace or Atma Swarupa, Brahma Swarupa is felt there. That is the power that governs everyone. This is the only means for the Jiva to end his mental distress and attain supreme bliss. This is the final toll gate. One has to pay this toll. The Chit-Jada Granthi has to be broken. One may practice letting go of the mind, but at some point, one has to turn the attention on the I am born as this body idea and burn it through. That jnana sadhana of who am I also gets absorbed in the Brahma Swarupa or grace. That is why Pinanchudu Tadipol, Bhagavan says, the arivu, the knowledge or consciousness with which we burn the ego thread, that also gets absorbed in the self, and grace alone remains. This is the content of this verse. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revatima, you can help us out with the time. Okay. Namo Ramana. We go on to the second verse, continuing the satsang. Verse number 535. We find this verse in the segment Meditation on the Truth. The subsegment is Eka Jiva. Eka Jiva as different from Nana Jiva. Verse 535. Who indeed are the ones who are caught in birth? Who indeed are the ones who became illustrious by tearing apart the net of birth? When a separate I does not arise, will there be anyone left still united with the body? Investigate this thoroughly and give me a reply. Who indeed are the ones who are caught in birth? Who indeed are the ones who became illustrious by tearing apart the net of birth? When a separate I does not arise, will there be anyone left still united with the body? Investigate this thoroughly and give me a reply. The authors have put up a note for our consideration. The authors say the ones who are caught in birth are those who identify with their bodies, whereas the ones who have torn apart the net of birth are the Jivan Muktas, those who have been liberated from I am the body idea while still physically alive. The implication of Bhagavan's question is that bondage and liberation are concepts that depend on the appearance of the I. When the I does not arise at all, ideas such as bondage and liberation cannot arise. A brief look at this Eka Jiva Tattva of Bhagavan. Bhagavan says that only after the first person arises, the second person, the third person, and the objects of the world arise. That one person, after the arising of whom all the other second persons, the 7 billion of them, and all the third persons, the objects and other things of the world, let us say, that the human beings we consider as just standing before us, and the other living beings and objects as the third persons, all of them arise only after the I arises. That's why Bhagavan says, whenever thought of other comes, whether that other is the 7 billion people of this loka, or some people, the ancestors who are said to have gone to the Pitru loka, or some of the other denizens of other worlds, whoever they may be, they all arise only after the arise of I inside you. See what depth that Vichara takes us. Whenever thought of any other comes, we have to ask, who am I? So that we go as the starting point of all living beings. Whenever thought of any living and non-living beings come, we have to hold that I, the Eka Jiva, arising after which only all the other things, arising of which only all the other things arise. That is Eka Jiva Tattva. It is a very deep vichara which Bhagavan gives, and one can actually feel the sinking of the consciousness along with Bhagavan's grace, deeper and deeper, till we take the responsibility that only after I arise, all the other people arise. So none of the thoughts of other people is taken out of our responsibility. Only after, forget about their troubling us, or they are good people, or not anything like that. They are not arising at all if I do not arise. So Bhagavan takes us to that depth. This verse is beyond that also. So one has to come to that landing board of Eka Jiva. That Eka Jiva itself is the first Jiva and the only Jiva, Eka Jiva Tattva, after which all the other Jivas arise. So whenever thought of other Jivas arise, they have defrauded me, they have helped me, these persons are good, that persons are bad. All that is thrown overboard by Bhagavan by saying, only after you arise, all those things arise, good, bad, everybody arises only after that. So you go and hold that eye. But this verse is even deeper than that. This says, who indeed are the ones caught in birth? When you inquire who is that first Jiva and take him to the source, then who is there who was caught in birth? There is only grace, there is only the Atma Swarupa, because you take responsibility for taking yourself to the source as the first Jiva, after which everything else arises. So there is no one caught. It is only a dream, or not even that. It is not at all there. The area of bondage is completely vanquished, and only the self is there. So who is there who is caught? Who indeed are the ones who become illustrious by tearing apart the net of birth? Who are the ones we have to say? There was a video said by somebody where one is submerging oneself up to neck in a sand pit and is said to have taken Jiva Samadhi, and a commentator is there saying, this is where we have to come and worship. But Bhagavan takes us to that consciousness where we don't have to go from place to place. There are said to be about 70-80 such Jiva Samadhis near Chennai alone. Now, where do you go in these places? And Bhagavan says that without the rise of the eye, time and place do not arise. So the darshan of the Swarupa is to be had within. By taking the Eka Jiva to the source, what happens then? The whole net of bondage, the bandha, it is just vanquished. There is nobody caught in bondage. Therefore, who am I to specifically point out, and this is the one who is a Jivan Mukta? Bhagavan, whose Samadhi is there, he is the Jivan Mukta. There is no Bandha Muktiyati Tamparam Sukham Vindati Iha Ji Vastu Daivika. The Jivastu, the Eka Jiva also merges in the Daivika, the Atma Swarupa. At that point, when the Eka Jiva is also abiding in the source, then the whole area of bondage is gone. Therefore, liberation as something apart vanishes. There is only mukti. When a separate I does not arise, will there be anyone left still united with the body? Investigate this thoroughly and give me a reply. Who is there to give a reply? Who is there to listen? Bhagavan is just making fun of us by saying, give me a reply. Once one has investigated this thoroughly, who is to give reply to whom? There is no individual left apart from the one self. By asking, give me a reply, Bhagavan says, are you still having delusion? Abide in the source where bondage and liberation both have been vanquished, and the self alone is gloriously shining as grace, which pushes one inside from outside and pulls one inside from within oneself. It is grace which completely consumes the whole area of bondage and liberation. The name of that grace is Atma Swarupa, Brahma Swarupa. And the Brahmastram given to vanquish even the Eka Jiva, to take one beyond bondage and liberation, that Brahmastram is indeed Atma Ucharam. Let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revatima, you will help us out again. Thank you. Namo Ramana. I request Venkatesh ji to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana, sir.
Ramana. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Dhyanamoolam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam, Mokshamulam Gurur Kripaha. Namo Ramana, everyone. Today I'll read some of the inputs that are coming today from Swami Shivananda. So what Gurudev says is all endeavors aim at the common ideal of perpetual abolition of sorrow and the experience of unending bliss. We all understand this. Bliss is only in the infinite. See, we need to know where to look for bliss. Bliss is only in the infinite, and sorrow is only in the finite. There is no bliss in the finite, and there is no sorrow in the infinite. Therefore, the attainment of the infinite life is the supreme purpose of this finite life. This is beautiful. I'll read this lines again. Bliss is only in the infinite, and sorrow is only in the finite. There is no bliss in the finite, and there is no sorrow in the infinite. Therefore, the attainment of the infinite life is the supreme purpose of this finite life. So, he says, what is this enlightenment? See what Nandakumar also was saying. What is this enlightenment about? What is the state of darkness that seems to be binding all human beings and that needs to be removed so that they may attain awakening? Unless you diagnose the disease, how can you prescribe a cure? This is a beautiful thing. Unless you know what you're trying to do, if you know you're going in one direction, unless you know where you're going, then only you can put it on Google Maps and go there. St. Francis of Assisi ends his world-famous prayer with the words, "And it is in dying to the little self that we are born to eternal life." Another mystic said, "Then shall I be free when I shall cease to be." So the essence of darkness, of bondage, of ignorance, of slumber would seem to be the feeling that one is a certain specific individual with a name, a form, a date of birth, a height and weight, with a certain personality and an ego. And they say until that is got rid of, emancipation, liberation is a far cry. Gurudev says, kill this little I, die to live, lead the divine life. Within you is hidden God. Within you is immortal soul. Within you is the ocean of bliss. Within you is the fountain of joy. All this we are not able to perceive. Why? Hidden God, we are not able to perceive. Immortal soul, we are not aware of. Bliss and joy is far off. We are always morose, dejected, depressed. All sorts of moods are there, but not joy and bliss. So why is that? Because if you really look, if you look around, I was traveling by train, you look around and see nobody's smiling, nobody's laughing. Why? When you have everything, you're sitting in an air-conditioned vehicle, but train, still nobody's happy. Why is that? Gurudev says that you are not experiencing the hidden God, the immortal soul, the fountain of joy, the ocean of bliss, because you are so much preoccupied with this little I. So much involved, completely entangled, overpowered, overwhelmed, and obscured by and wrapped up with this little I It is like a fire that is completely obscured by thick black smoke. The shining fire within cannot be seen. We only see the smoke, the darkness. Thus, Gurudev says that due to so much preoccupation with this eye, you are not able to see the bliss, the joy, the hidden God. So, what is the way? Kill this little eye. How to kill this little eye? By leading a divine life, a life in God. As a great sage, Vedavyas, who dominates the entire scene of ancient Indian religious and spiritual history, like a great colossus said, I will tell you in brief the heart of the spiritual problem of the individual soul. I will tell you the secret. 2 words imply bondage and 2 words imply liberation. The 2 words that imply bondage are I and mine. And the 2 words that imply liberation are not I and not mine. It is simple, but it is difficult. That's why the ancients said, Mrityorma amritam gamayaha. From immortality lead us to immortality. This could not be with reference to the body, because the body is not going to be immortal. No scriptures ever say that this body was anything to do with immortality. Rather, dust thou art, and to dust thou returnest. Therefore, immortality has never been affirmed in relation to the body. Finally, all the great ones say that remembrance of God is life, forgetfulness of God is death. So that, therefore, it is the great prayer, the inner content of the prayer is to liberate us from the ego and selfishness, because there is ego, there is selfishness, self-centered living, self-assertiveness, a tendency to have scant respect for others' feelings and sentiments, others' people's self-respect. Therefore, what they say, this awareness is truth, this is the reality, this awareness is light, it is immortality. So remember this beautiful thing that Vedavyas has told us is not I, not mine, is liberation, and bondage is I and mine. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, sir. Thank you. Namo Ramana Vaibhavji and Pratama, could we start the chanting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Namo Ramana. Bharatvaja Vishwanatha Virachitam Sri Ramana Stottara Shatanamavalihi Apara Satchit Sukhavari Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Nirvichintayami Om Mahasena Mahumshena Jataya Namaha Om Sri Ramanaya Namaha Om Gurave Namaha Om Akhanda Samvidakaraaya Namaha Om Mahaujase Namaha Om Karanodbhavaya Namaha Om Jagadhitavatārāya Namaha Om Sri Bhuminathasthalostithāya Namaha Om Parasharakulottamsāya Namaha Om Sundararya Tapaphalaaya Namaha Om Kamaniya Sucharitraya Namaha Om Sahayamba Sahayavate Namaha Om Shonachala Maholina Manasaya Namaha Om Swarna Hastakaya Namaha Om Srimad Dvadashanta Mahasthale Labdha Vidyodayaya Namaha Om Mahashakti Nipatena Prabuddhaya Namaha Om Paramartha Vidhe Namaha Om Tivraya Namaha Om Pitrupadanveshine Namaha Om Tindumaulina Pitrumate Namaha Om Pituradeshadashona Shailam Raptaya Namaha Om Tapomayaya Namaha Om Udasinaya Namaha Om महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ च्यूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षभावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजितजलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयाणवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीषोडाचलरिद्बोधस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ तद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्छिन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानो अरुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजलिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवश तादात्म्यभावङ्गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीर नित्य तपसा लोकान् पुनासेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।
नमो रमण का ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ।